Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on Monday morning after Father's Day, which will always be remembered in the Lowe household as the day Bradley Beal, the era of mediocrity in Washington, 8th seed by hell or high water, play-in kings of the East, is over. Bradley Beal, armed with the only no-trade clause in the NBA, an absolutely ridiculous, insane piece of business by the previous Washington Wizards regime, used the no-trade clause to aim himself directly to Phoenix to team up with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, a new big three in Phoenix. DeAndre Ayton remains on the Suns. In return, the Wizards of Washington, with their beautiful pink jerseys, receive Chris Paul for now. I would be very surprised if Chris Paul plays a second for the Washington Wizards. Landry Shamet, just wears out his goodwill with every team he's on. An unknown number of second-round picks. I believe the Suns had up to 6 to trade. It might be damn near all of them. There may still be a first-round pick swap or two, which is a Byzantine thing to begin with. Obviously, this is a crushing disappointment of a return for the Wizards that has nothing to do with Michael Winger and Will Dawkins and Travis Schlenk and their new regime, and everything to do with Ted Leonsis and the green lighting the previous regime, or asking them to do whatever it takes to keep Bradley Beal happy. And Mark Bartelstein, whose son Josh Bartelstein is the CEO of the Suns, and we'll get to that connection too, Bradley Beal's agent, got a goddamn no trade clause that I think any analysis of this deal just has to start there. It's the most important variable in the thing. It's the reason he's with the Suns and not with anybody else. It's the reason there was not like a classic trade war for Bradley Beal. The no trade clause is the whole thing. The Suns now have these three guys who, all shooting, mid-range shooting, overlapping skill sets. Can Bradley Beal find his three-point shot again? I think he can. They had a fascinating choice here of how to proceed in this offseason, and we can talk about that. Woo! The offseason is here, Bobby Marks. This could have ripple effects for Damian Lillard, for Chris Paul, for the Miami Heat, for the Brooklyn Nets, for just lots and lots of people. How are you?
I'm good. And as we speak, Bradley Beal still has a no trade clause. That baby carries with him to Phoenix.
Hey, and that was an issue with this is a three-pronged negotiation between Mark Bartelstein and Bradley Beal, the Wizards, and whoever wanted Bradley Beal. And I know for sure that at least a couple of teams, if not all of them, made the ask, hey, would you waive the no trade? Would you eliminate the no trade clause if we got you? And that was a non-starter. He was keeping the no trade clause, and good for him, by the way. He's got it. Why not keep it? It's a big deal. He gets to pick where he lives and where his family lives. That's a huge thing. He should keep it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't say that, if he was going to Phoenix and, the sell would have been, hey, you've got Durant and Booker and, we'll continue to build. I mean, who knows, 2 years from now, who knows where this thing goes? And hey, trying to get off $57 million down the road will be extremely challenging, but he has it. There was no need for him to give up the no trade. And it was one of those deals where we've talked about it, that when you look at the no trade and the contract, it just shrinks the marketplace. I mean, that's the reality of it here. And
well, from Bradley Beal's perspective, it expands the marketplace to anywhere you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and looking back on my notes, the one thing I probably underestimated Phoenix. Like, I just didn't think they would basically do a cannonball off the deep end here and say, here, take it all, and be able to keep DeAndre and then basically give up, we'll talk about the picks and all that stuff. But man, what a blockbuster to start the offseason.
It's a blockbuster. What was your first reaction let's start with the Suns, because the Wizards, we know what they're doing. It's over. They're ripping the Band-Aid off. We could see Porzingis opt in and get traded. I went through the fake Porzingis trades with you and Gavoni last week. We could see Kuzma gone. Like we know what they're doing, and they're aiming for, in very Wizards fashion, they're aiming for the top of the draft the year after the top of the draft was historically incredible. Go Wiz. But it needed to happen, and it's happened. First gut instinctual reaction about the Suns.
Second apron. That was my first reaction. Like t-shirts made up, second apron for the foreseeable future. They basically took the CBA and gave it the middle finger. I mean, that's basically how they did it. I mean, that was my initial reaction here. But then when I kind of decompressed was, okay, if they hadn't done the trade and they just waived and stretched Chris Paul, then you were basically looking at the non-tax mid-level at 12-2 and in the veteran minimum to build out your roster here. Now you trade him and you replace him with Bradley Beal, and you have the veteran minimum, and all the other stuff's going to come down the road. All these harsh restrictions and these second apron, that's really for to worry about next offseason here. But yeah, my initial reaction was a second apron, and then my second reaction was that this is who the Suns are. Like, there's no more picks out there likely to trade or swap, or this is kind of who they are. And then I guess my third reaction, I'm expanding myself, is what does this mean for DeAndre Ayton? That's my third reaction.
Poor DeAndre Ayton. I don't know why. So he's making a lot of money. Just, does anyone want DeAndre Ayton? Do the Suns want DeAndre Ayton? The Pacers offered him all this money. I don't think they want DeAndre Ayton anymore. If they did, he might be on the Pacers by now. But anyway, I don't want to talk about DeAndre Ayton yet. First of all, you just came up with a great niche merchandising idea. If the Suns, the Thunder did not listen to me about the Dort license plate that I have in my TV backdrop, but no one made it. They didn't sell it. If the Suns made like 500 orange aprons and they just put Durant's salary, Beal's salary, and Booker's salary on them in white lettering, and then there had the little Sunburst logo below it, 100 people would buy it. I would buy it. I am, now that I'm a suburban loser dad, I am a C- on the grill. C-. Started off as an F, didn't know how to do anything. I'm up to a C-. I would wear that apron. Suns, free idea. I would $20 an apron. It would cost $2 to make. You'd buy it.
Oh, I would definitely buy it. I actually would probably frame it and put it behind me when I'm home. We can show it, I mean, they basically, listen, like the rules came into place for a reason. So these three max stars can't join itself. What happened was that the loophole, there's we had a 2-week window or a loophole, and then we have another year loophole before everything else really comes to a crashing halt here. And give them credit, they took advantage of it. They knew that what they had wasn't good enough. Who knows what they got a lot of work to do as far as filling out the roster here, but we'll see.
Okay, so let's start basic. Suns. So you outlined it. They had a choice. If with or without Chris Paul, their choice was essentially, let's say without Chris Paul. Let's say they stretch Chris Paul. Just, we don't want to be in the Chris Paul business anymore. We can't find a trade. We'll stretch him. Durant, Ayton, Booker, Shamet, Paul's money, Payne's money, Ish Wainwright's money. They're already at like $135 million just with that. Add on some minimums, they're up to 140. So yeah, they have the tax mid-level. And so I think they calculated two things here. Number one, if we went that route and we used the tax mid-level or the non-tax mid-level, the big mid-level to get a player or two, we are now hard capped. We cannot go over $169 million payroll this coming season, thereabouts. No one wants to be hard capped. The hard cap sucks. It restricts you. Opportunities come and go. You can't do it. And they just said, you know what? Rather than that, let's just not be hard capped anywhere. Let's just blow past the second apron. Yes, we can't use our exceptions. That's fine. We'll have other exceptions we can use. Let's just ignore that, blow past it, not get ourselves in this pickle where we have a ceiling that if we hit it, we're done. We can't do anything. I think that absolutely was their thinking. And underneath that, or maybe even above it, is I said this from the beginning. The Suns did not have enough good players to lose one of them, Chris Paul, for the unknown of exceptions, who $12.2 million worth of salary you can use. He's too good for that. They're too thin for that. So I understand why people are panning the deal for the Suns. Brad Beal has not had by his standards, very good last 3 seasons. He certainly has not had a very good, healthy last 3 seasons. He's a 3-time All-Star. Hasn't made an All-Star team since 2019, I believe. He's on this massive contract that pays him $46 million, $50 million, $54 million, $57 million for the next 4 years. That contract, I think, is the number one reason why the Miami Heat do not have Bradley Beal on their team right now. We'll talk about them later. So I understand the criticisms. To me, they stared at that scenario of, we could have Chris Paul, we could have exceptions in place of Chris Paul that might get us, I don't know, whoever your version of like Jeff Green plus whatever is, or we could turn Chris Paul into Bradley Beal, flaws and all. I think that scenario is clearly the best of those 3 scenarios. And yes, they'll have trouble filling out the roster. They're going to need to use minimums. They're going to need to use bird rights. They're going to do that in very creative ways. They already were in that kind of same jail. The choice was made with Durant. That was when the choice was made. The choice was, we're breaking up this feel-good team that made the finals 2 years ago. We're going all in on a top-heavy team that's going to have us in cap jail. They're already in jail. They didn't even double down on that choice. They just made the next logical leap from that choice.
You hit it right on the head. I mean, once they went all in February with Durant, and when you added with Ayton's contract, those the 3 players, your options were, you basically boiled down to, that's why waiving him, although that was always the last resort, and that's why it was going to be taken up until June 28th, because that was, out of all your options, that was probably the least one you wanted to do. And you wanted to go out and try to use that contract to bring you back either multiple players or try to bring you back a star player. And it's a perfect storm. I mean, Bradley Beal doesn't have it. If Bradley Beal doesn't have a no trade clause, I think it changes. I think there's certain other teams that now join the fray here. Now it would be up to the Wizards if they feel like, do we give the equity clause to Bradley Beal because he's been a good soldier here, or do we do it for the best interest of the organization? It's similar to what's going to happen maybe in Portland with Damian Lillard here, but that didn't happen. That didn't happen because of the no trade clause.
Well, there's a 0% chance he's on the Phoenix Suns if he doesn't have a no trade clause. 0%. I mean, that's the only reason the Suns are in the game. Let's talk basketball before we get into the other mechanics of this. How do you like the Suns? Now, they've got to fill out the roster. So, right now they have Durant, Beal, Booker, Ayton, Payne, maybe, Wainwright, maybe. I do think that we are going to see them overpay Jock Landale, maybe overpay Torrey Craig, maybe overpay Bismack Biyombo, maybe even overpay Darius Bazley, or not overpay, but pay all the guys they have legit bird rights on. And it wouldn't surprise me, Mr. Marks, in an era in which starting next year, the Suns as a second apron team will only be able to take back 100 exact salary matching in trades. Like, there's not going over by more than $250K. I think they can't trade $20 million worth of salary and take back 24. They can take back 20 or less. Would not surprise me if some of those deals that I just mentioned, some of those free agents get re-signed to dollars that are going to be exact matches, the best they can project of like what the mid-level exception will be. They're going to try and finagle all sorts of things like that so they can give themselves some trade flexibility that way. So they'll have some guys on their team. Some guys will come back. Some ring chasers will come. But I want to ask you, first blush, just Beal, Durant, Booker, Ayton, and I don't think they have anything imminent for Ayton. That doesn't mean they're not going to trade Ayton, because similarly to what I just said, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, starting next year, not only can the Suns cannot aggregate their own players in trades, so they can't take a 20 and a 10. They can't take back players who are aggregated in trades, correct?
That is incorrect. And
That's incorrect.
yes,
Okay.
I put that out yesterday, and I talked to a bunch of teams just to get a more clarification. They are not allowed to aggregate Ayton's money, so they can't aggregate Ayton and
They can't trade
$7 million
plus campaign for a $29 million
Yeah,
player.
so this is for next offseason, the
Yes.
24. They are allowed to take back a 20 and a 15.
Okay,
in the
so
deal.
what I
Yes.
was going to say is, so they can down the line, they are not under a strict timeline of, if I wanted to break Ayton up into 3 players via trade, they can keep doing that beyond this season.
Yeah, they're not on that Heat. The Heat timeline is different because we had talked about it where they were facing the aggregation because of Heroes money, right? Like they needed if Damian Lillard, say next year, became available and the Heat were a second apron team, they weren't allowed to add Hero and a $20 million player and aggregate that there. That's a little bit of a different timeline. With Ayton, there really is no timeline for him. I mean, you're not forced to do anything. The only timeline is that for starting July 1st, it's 110% as far as money coming back. Right now, we're still in that 125% boat. And then for when you're a second apron team, is that, you're not taking money, more money back in a deal there.
But my point is, if they want to trade Ayton for 3 players,
yeah, you can do it.
They will be able to do that beyond this season.
Yes.
So they're under no time crunch to deal Ayton like now.
Correct.
To break them up. Because they do face a fascinating decision. Because everything any team in the Western Conference does, including this trade, has to be done with an eye on the Denver Nuggets. And you need to either make a choice. Not necessarily a choice, but your choice is something like, we either really care about getting a center who can guard Jokic, or we invest our resources elsewhere and try to just shoot Jokic, outshoot the Nuggets and make Jokic cover in space and go 5 out. And then we play Jock Landale 18 minutes a game to just rough him up. We go all in on shooting, spread the floor. That's the only path we have. And that's a decision that I think Ayton is going to be involved in, because Ayton, until this season, had done okay on Jokic. I think Jokic has reached unguardability at this point. And I know you said this. I agree with you. The Denver Nuggets are the favorites to win the Western Conference now, and almost regardless of anything else that happens in the offseason. I don't think the Suns are better than them. I do, however, think the Suns, as of now, enter the season as the second best team in the Western Conference. But before I go all in on the basketball stuff, I want your take on the fit between the big 3, and if you include Ayton, the big 3.5.
I think what we saw when Chris got hurt in the playoffs here, you're going to see Booker more at point, right? I think that's probably what the assumption is going to be, that he'll probably be based on, primarily ball handler. So now that, that creates, with Bradley, I know we've talked a lot about, certainly his health, and that's going to be a big part of this here, but there was a regression in Washington the last 2 years. Is it a result of, basically kind of a lack of point guard the last 2 years? You basically had Monty Morris here. I mean, his numbers, his catch and shoot numbers came down a little bit here. Listen, there's a lot of firepower here, and the 3 players, even add Devin Booker to the mix here, have not been durable. And it's going to be, as you said, it's going to be high level as far as what other fits around there. But I'm fine. I'm comfortable with the fit. It's but I just need to see kind of what else is there. My concern with Booker too, a little bit, if he is, you're basically going Booker, Durant, Beal, Ayton, and then, another wing, is Booker going to be chasing guards, points, so a little bit of a wear and tear factor here, but at least from a fit standpoint, for me, it's about health. And was the last 2 years of Beal on a decline a blip, or is it a bigger thing?
So I like the fit way more than, not way more, but more than what appears to be the consensus. And again, I understand, oh, here we go, mid-range mania. Oh, they're recreating the Nets. How did that work out? Oh, Bradley Beal's three-point shot has fallen off. Oh, that's not going to be great. Oh, defense. Defense, they are going to need to find a way to be a credible defense. Credible. Just credible. Just like the Nuggets found a way to be a credible defense. Credible. And Beal has been a bad defensive player now for a while. So I understand all that. I think offensively, this team's going to be dynamite. And Bradley Beal is going to be one of those guys who, if he's healthy, and he said the injuries the last few years have been like hamstringy stuff that makes you, on one hand, nervous. On the other hand, like, well, now he's going to actually play for a team that has something to play for. You know, I don't know how much of those injuries were just like, we're going down the tubes anyway this year. I think he's going to be one of those guys who suddenly looks awesome as a second option and more pointedly a third option. And there is a clear hierarchy on this team. He is the third option, and it is not close. I think, frankly, it's Devin Booker's team. The team belongs to Devin Booker, and it should belong to Devin Booker. And they will have to sort out how to play. We saw the chemistry was kind of scattershot. They didn't really figure out how to play off of each other, Paul, Booker, Durant last year, how to get the ball moving from side to side, when to use Durant as a screener, as a ball handler. Now they have a whole season to figure that out. I think Beal will look awesome as a second or third option. And again, the alternative was what exactly? They turned Chris Paul into Bradley Beal. Here are Bradley Beal's numbers on catch and shoot three-pointers for the last 9 seasons. Percentage. 40%. This is in order from most recent to past. 40%, 30%, 39, 38, 37, 43, 42, 39, 42, 42. Those 43s and 42s were playing with John Wall. Those 43s and 42s were when his three-pointers skewed catch and shoot instead of the last 2 or 3 years when they skewed pull-up because the Wizards were bad and he was effectively their point guard. I think he's going to shoot the lights out. I think he's going to shoot really well from 3, and the team will be a really good offensive team. And for all the clowning of like, oh, they're just recreating the KD Nets with 3 high-usage ball handlers, the KD Nets were awesome when they played. They were unstoppable, and only injuries and just bleh. I don't even want to get into
They blew the doors off of Milwaukee in game 1 and 2.
Like that, if that's what we're saying that was a bad outcome for reasons that didn't have anything to do with basketball, and they didn't even really need to be a good defensive team. Their offense was so good. Now the difference is, and this is what I'm interested in, the difference is this 3-pronged monster does not have a passer anywhere near James Harden's level. Booker's a good passer. Beal's an okay passer who can also move off the ball, although a lot of his off-ball movement was like dribble handoff stuff with Marcin Gortat back in the day and all that kind of stuff. But he can come off pin downs and do all that you need. And Durant's a good passer. Harden is an all-time passer. And part of the reason that big 3 was so unstoppable offensively was there was a clear, like, this is the guy that's going to handle the ball the most. KD will handle it the second most. Kyrie will just kind of find his points in transition. He became a good cutter. He did his Kyrie stuff. That's what I'm most interested in, because if the Nets are not to be clowned as an example of what the Suns could be offensively, defensively, the Suns have a lot of questions. I do think the playmaking question and how they wring enough passing out of this is an interesting one, because there is no Harden here. And by the way, the Harden to Phoenix thing was never a thing. That was never going to be a real thing.
No, I agree. I mean, I never saw a clear path, for Harden. They also have a trade exception too that they have access to, which who knows? I mean, it's just another tool for them. But you're right. I mean, that there is a difference between this Phoenix team and this Brooklyn team is the, certainly the Harden factor.
I think the fit offensively is going to be fine. I think people are kind of overthinking it. Now, defensively, it's going to be defense, health. Those are all fair questions. And the Nuggets are The Nuggets are watching this. I mean, I guarantee you, I know the Nuggets are watching this. Like, yes, they're in the afterglow, but they're watching this like, all right, you guys want to you guys just want to have no depth and no chemistry and three dudes who need and want the ball. Like, cool. We built our team pretty carefully. We like it. We're not scared one bit of you. And I actually again, both these teams healthy, depending on how the Suns fill it out. The Nuggets to me are better. They're still the best team.
No, I agree. I mean, and they've played together. I mean, that's the big thing. And I think, the Bruce Brown decisions, which is, the likelihood is that he declines that option, but he, hey, he might come back on a discount. Who knows? You never know. But I'm not ready to put Phoenix up there ahead of Denver just because of, what it looks like right now. I need to see what the roster looks like. I need a sample of games here. I need to see this team get healthy. Listen, for the playoffs, you roll this team out and you just put, spare parts. I love it. But as you said, you got to get there, right? And you got to get there in one piece, and you got to get there as a pretty good seed also.
I do think the Bruce Brown thing becomes a little bit more pressing for the Nuggets now because they do need as many perimeter defenders as they can throw at these guys. And Bruce Brown's very good, and particularly on the ball. And he's going to have a market at the mid-level exception for multiple years at worst, and maybe more than that. He needs to get paid. This is his time. And their only route is really to just do the Bobby Portis thing where you sign a 1+1 at whatever the most they can offer him is, which is, you can probably tell me off the top of your head, it's 120% of whatever.
7.8 million.
Yeah. And then you wink, this is, we never had this conversation, but you decline your option. And then we re-signed you at the full early bird number.
How all of a sudden did I get Walmart stock in my account all of a sudden?
And in the meantime, when you meet with him now, you're like, hey man, what's your favorite wine? What can we do for you? I can get you the best table at this restaurant over here. Whatever, dry cleaning, pick up a dry cleaning. Let's talk about the Heat, who were the most I thought the most logical landing place for Bradley Beal. And in the end, I think they kept their powder dry. I really think that's what you never, as you recreate and you're on the phone all night trying to figure out who was offered to when and how were they offered? Were they offered? What's an offer? Were they actually offered? Or were they just bandied about? In the end, my best guess, and please disagree with me if you think I'm wrong, please. My best guess is they looked at Tyler Hero's contract, said, okay, 27, 29, 31, 33. Beal, 46, 51, 54, 57. Beal's 7 years older than Tyler Hero. Still young. Tyler Hero's still so young. And everyone's down on him because the Heat made the finals without him. And I think the Heat, to the best of my knowledge, looked in the mirror and said, is Bradley Beal $30 million and 7 years older better than Tyler Hero? And if not, and if Washington doesn't want our other long-term salary anyway, and Washington clearly wanted to just get this money off the books and move on, then why don't we just keep our powder dry for the next wave of guys? And maybe, I don't think anybody knows this for certain. I really do not think anybody knows what Damian Lillard is going to do, but maybe it's Damian Lillard in 4 days. Maybe not. I don't think anybody knows, but that's my best read on the Miami situation. What have you heard?
No, that's why we started to hear Victor Oladipo, Kyle Lowry, right? It went from Hero as the main guy, and then whatever else, Duncan Robinson, for example, as far as to make the money work. From what I've, that Miami certainly was looking to get off, to keep that Hero contract, to get off the expirings. It would have cost them probably the 18th pick in the draft. It might have cost them something down the road. whether it been maybe a protected future one. I didn't see a scenario where Miami can go get Bradley Beal, and then all of a sudden, if Damian Lillard became available, enough. It just didn't. It
Oh
just
no, there was no way to
there
get
was
both.
no
No,
they don't have enough.
financially you can't have
Yeah,
both anyway.
they don't have enough. There's not enough draft equity here, and I think for the Heat, they were, hey, if this is what we'll do, not including Hero. If they don't do it, great. We'll just wait and we'll kind of sit in a holding pattern. If Lillard becomes available, and who knows, Dame Lillard becomes available if Dame Lillard wants to become available, right? I mean, that's at the end. That's how I look at it. This is what we have to offer, whether it be Hero and 3 1s and whatever salary that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I actually think in a weird way, Beal is a cleaner fit in Miami than he is in Phoenix, because Miami has the defenders to kind of prop him up on that end of the floor, and they need badly another reliable ball handler who can shoot and run pick and roll with Bam, who's never going anywhere. I mean, Bam might end up being a Heat lifer. But they didn't get him. And as for Dame, look, it's smokescreen season. We talked last week about Portland's dilemma with the number 3 pick in the draft, right? And the idea that if they just make the pick, that means Dame's out. They have to trade Dame. Dame will ask out. And the only way to keep Dame is to trade the pick. And whatever veteran they can get for that pick, plus Anthony Simons, plus whatever else they have to put in, that's the vehicle to keeping Dame. Or if there's a third path where they say, hey, look, this is a generational prospect. We got to take him. Dame, we will try to placate you by re-signing Jeremy Grant, by doing X, Y, and Z in free agency, by trading Yusuf Nurkic for this person. Give us until the trade deadline. Let's see how the team is. Maybe you'll end up really liking it. We think the West is kind of open. Maybe we'll be like the 4th seed in January, February, and you'll be okay. I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know that anybody knows how realistic that is. I don't know what Damian Lillard wants. I don't know what his reaction will be on Thursday if the Blazers just take Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson and are like, hey, we're done. That's it. There's no Pascal Siakam. There's no Zion Williamson. There's no Mikal Bridges. There's no OG Anunoby. There's no whoever you want. Sorry, we just couldn't pass up this opportunity. It's better for our franchise, but stick with us. I don't know how realistic that is. Not only that, Mr. Marks, Damian Lillard doesn't have a no trade clause. He has a lot of years left on his contract. I don't know if Miami wins a trade war for Damian Lillard. They might, because point guard is such a loaded position around the league, because so many of the teams that are in win now mode have already traded all their stuff. And so many of the teams that are not in total win now mode don't want a 32-year-old point guard who's going to make $60 million in 3 years. They may well. Hero plus whatever, plus 3 firsts, that may be all it takes. But there'll be other teams. What is your best synopsis of the lay of the land at the number 3 pick right now?
Well, I mean, I think the lay of the land right now is certainly it's going to be either Miller or Scoop, but that comes into there's not a deal out there as of Monday, and we still have 3 or 4 days for Portland to move off that, right? It's not, and that certainly, I don't know if it does change. I don't know if Zion Williamson becomes available. I don't know if Brandon Ingram becomes available. One of those 2 players here. I think you hit it right on the head that, like, if you're the Trailblazers, you're basically picking the best available, and then you're going to have that conversation with him saying, hey, let's see where Shaedon Sharpe looks. We're going to bring back Jeremy Grant. Let's see what happens with Scoot Henderson. And then if you want, we can go in a different direction. But as you said, like, he doesn't have a no trade clause like Bradley Beal has. The question would be, how much he's built up so much equity. Do you almost treat it that way? But here's the thing. If it came down to, all right, we're going to make a deal. We're going to make a move. If Miami comes in, and let's say a team like Brooklyn comes in and he wants to go to Miami, Brooklyn, second choice. And Brooklyn just says, here, you know what? We're going to give you a couple of these Phoenix picks. We'll give you that Dallas pick. We'll give you 3 unprotected and whatever. And that is the better offer. for the Trailblazers, what direction do you go in? Do you take the best offer, or do you want to take the team that he wants to go to?
And I think the Brooklyn Nets, who are on my list of Beal teams, if I can find my list of Beal teams or Dame teams. I think they would have a frothy internal debate about whether going all in, and I mean all in. Like if you can get him half in, that's a different story. But all in for Damian Lillard, you pair him with Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton and Cam John, whatever's left over. I don't know what goes out, if it's all picks and young players, whatever. So presumably somebody who's not Mikal Bridges but is also good is going out in that trade, just for salary reasons, if nothing else. Well, I don't even want to say the name Ben Simmons. Can we just not do the shirt? I know everyone's making fun of it, but it's true. Can we just not do the shirtless Instagram posts? Like, just nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody's convinced. Nobody's convinced. Like, I think they would have a real internal debate. Like, is that a smart move, or having pivoted from this era of disaster and accumulated so many picks, can we slow go it a little bit? I think that would be a big internal debate. As for the number 3 pick, I don't know. I don't know what Portland is going to do. The Zion noise is so all over the place that I'm in the mode where I've talked to a million people and I've just given up trying to figure out, like, are they actually maybe going to trade him? Are they not going to trade him? I know Gavoni said his indication was no. I've heard that same stuff, but then there's all this other buzz going on. I have no idea what's going on anymore. I have no idea what Toronto's going to do. You know, I wouldn't turn my nose up at Pascal Siakam, though. That dude's good. He's got to get paid a lot of money, but he's good. And I think he can play with Jeremy Grant. And Anunoby, he's a good player. Everyone keeps waiting for him to get great. Hasn't happened yet. Bridges, that's a hand in glove fit. Those are all good players. I don't know. Zion is, I don't even know how to value Zion. Like, is he more Zion playing 60 games a year, forget 80, 60, is like far and away more valuable than the number 3 pick. It's not close. Zion now, I don't even know how to value him. He's played 25 games a year for 4 years. I don't know how to project him. I don't have access to his medical records. If I'm trading for him, I'll get that at the last minute. I just don't even know what to do with that. I don't know it's just chaos right now.
Well, I mean, how you value him is that you're basically, it's a gut decision, right? It's a gut decision based on what you saw in the 114 games. It's a gut decision based on what you saw in November, December when he played, and he was top 5 probably in the league at that, at when he played. We've talked. I said this. I said it this morning, and I've said it the last couple of days here. Like, I'm not concerned about the contract, right? Like, I'm not concerned, like, oh my God, we got $194 million and this guy doesn't play, because there's so much we've talked about, there's so much stipulations in there, right? I mean, it's one of the great NFL type contracts where if a team had to get out of it, they eventually could down the road. But what does that say when you just traded the number 3 pick for it, right?
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost here. But yeah, it is man, you better have some conviction that this guy is going to be out there if you're going to go in that direction. Siakam, for me, is intriguing, and I think if you flipped him for 3, you get him there. Him being on expiring, I think you can. In Lillard, it is there. That's a guy that I would be comfortable, certainly re-signing, there. But yeah, I mean, that's 3's got value. It's just a matter of like, who's going to be that guy that you would actually move it for.
Yeah, there's so much noise now that I can no longer figure out with any certainty what is going to happen and what Damian Lillard will say if the Blazers just keep the pick, or where he would even want to go.
Well, he said it. I mean, like, I think we talked about it. Like, when he did that interview, like he said it, like, it's always, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? So it's a matter of like, who is coming back and what that roster looks like. And if it was, certainly if it was in the, if it's Brooklyn, let's say, and it's just a pick package, right? It's a pick package and it includes like a bunch of expirings just to get off his money. That maybe is more appealing. Same with Miami. If it's, I mean, we already talked about it's Hero here. So that's the other factor in it is that, but he does, as we said, he doesn't have a no trade. So if Portland's looking,
I'll tell you, Lillard, Butler, Bam would scare the crap out of me if I were any team in the Eastern Conference. Now the Heat are going to have to pay a ginormous tax bill, no exceptions, the whole thing. See if they can hang on to Caleb Martin in that kind of transaction. But that big three is a real big three. That's a scary big three. The Knicks have all the goods to make any of these deals. And I think they sniffed around Beal for sure. I don't know what did you hear about how involved the Knicks were with Beal?
Yeah, I mean, considering that they have their pick, right? I think that was something that would have been in play. They have the Wizards pick that's protected. For them, it's a matter of like, it's certainly a cost issue when you've got quickly coming up. You still have, eventually you're going to probably extend Brunson down the road when Beal's making $57 million here. But I think if from their perspective, if there was a low risk move and we didn't have to give up everything, we go out and do it. But now the thing is that all these picks that they have, whether it be their own in the future, and they've got a Milwaukee pick that's protected. The Wizards pick probably is the least valuable out of these picks here. I don't know. I don't think that probably conveys at all. And you're going to wind up turning it into a second.
I didn't get this. And again, there's just so much noise around all this. I didn't get the sense that the Knicks were like really in the derby at the end. And again, it's a derby that Bradley Beal controls. So that at the end, there's only one team in it, and it's the team he picks. I don't know what the Knicks would have given up. I don't know the exact price, and they weren't in it enough for me to really dig so hard into that. I honestly think Brunson is so good that I wouldn't go hard for Beal, and I wouldn't go hard for Lillard. Like, I don't really get the New York Lillard thing. Like, Brunson is good enough. The last time we saw him, he was scoring 40 points on a bum ankle against the Heat in the playoffs. Like, every game, it seemed like. I got my chips. I like my team. I think we're a good team, playoff team, solid team. I'm saving my chips for other stuff. I don't know. I'm not going to go through all the names. I just small guard is not the place I'm going. And I don't feel the need to like upgrade from Jalen Brunson at cost. If like you're talking about a Brunson for little, like I'm fine the way they are.
There's always going to be somebody else. There's always going to be, right now it's Beal and maybe Lillard, and eventually it's going to be somebody else, and it might be somebody better. And that's how you have to look at it, where it's like going Christmas shopping, right? You want all the toys, but eventually there's going to be a better toy next year.
When I was at the Combine in Chicago, Doc Rivers got fired, and I wrote the night of the lottery. There was already buzz going around that had not flipped, but changed the equation in James Harden's calculus about like, well, maybe the noise was already starting like, okay, pump the brakes a little bit on the Houston thing. The brakes have now been pumped, like slammed on around the league to the point that I bet if you pulled 50 front office executives, a majority of them would guess he's going back to Philly. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. We'll see. I mean, James, who the hell knows? But if James Harden goes back to Philly, I don't even know if this is feasible. Would you at least call Portland and say, Harris and Maxey, do they even have a pick?
I think 2030.
I mean, is Maxey, I guess there's a two-pronged question here. Is Maxey already too good for Philly to move for a 30-something guard when they already have another 30-something guard, and defense is going to be a problem with any Lillard-Harden combo? Or flip it around, is Maxey the best thing Portland might get offered among all the deals we're talking about for Lillard. If Lillard indeed, and again, we don't know what he's going to do. That's an interesting one to me. I don't even know if it would work on either side.
It's almost like the Gilgeous-Alexander trade for Paul George without the picks. Almost like that kind of like young player, rookie contract. You're going to have to pay him, Maxey. He's not making. Yeah, he's up this. He's extension eligible this offseason. He's restricted free agent next offseason. So eventually, you are going to have to pay him, and that's what I mean. Those are your cards, right? That's all. That's what your cards are right now.
I mean, I said last week I wouldn't. There's no way you put him in a Beal deal. But Dame's a different. Dame with Harden coming back is a different conversation. I haven't thought. Everyone loves the Jaylen Brown for Damian Lillard deal. Everyone, the media loves to speculate about that one. I haven't thought so hard about that one because I understand Jaylen Brown's now extension eligible. Boston knows more internally about what he wants, and he has agency in this whole process. I just have never loved the idea of that trade for Boston. I just don't like trading a guy who's like Jaylen Brown has his warts, and he was like borderline all NBA. I had him in at the end because of injuries to other players, but he's still 25 or 26 or whatever he is. I don't know if that's the deal that catapults me if I'm Boston, like past my issues. That now maybe it is because all my issues are offensive execution, and this guy's an all-time crunch time killer. But that one has never felt great to me from the Celtics perspective. Now it never felt as great. Everyone loves to just boom, done, clean it up. Well, I don't love it. I don't even love it from Portland's perspective that much, honestly.
No, because it's not. I mean, what else is there? Anything else coming with him? I think if you're Portland, if he ever, if he ever was moved, I think it's got to be almost like, I guess, comparable to what the Jazz went through, where you're kind of trying to reset in the middle, where you're getting a player on a good contract, whether it been in the case of whether it was Markkanen there, and then you're getting the picks, right? You're getting the 3 or 4, unprotected ones.
Speaking of agency and player agency, I do want to talk about the Bartelstein connection between Mark Bartelstein, the agent, and Josh Bartelstein, who's the CEO of the Suns. I think that's his title, CEO of the Suns.
Yeah.
Father-son. Josh is the son. I think that connection absolutely helped grease the wheels for this trade. Like, that's just how the business works. Human connections. Most of the time, it's GMs who like each other and have had beers together or used to work on the same team, and now they've ascended to be GMs. They talk. There's no question it helped. But this whole, like, I saw this whole thing when I would pop in on Twitter about how, oh, here we go. The Bartelsteins are colluding to manipulate Bradley Beal to go to the Suns. I'm like, dude, Bradley Beal is going to go with, like, don't reduce Bradley Beal to like a pawn in some agent and son game. Bradley Beal has been in the league a long time. He's very, very smart. He's going to pick where he wants to go. He's not going to be like, oh, I'm good. You guys want me to go here? I'll go here. Like, that's not how this happened. Bradley Beal was recruited by the Suns, wanted to go to the Suns, and picked the Suns because that's where he wanted to be. The connection clearly helped. It helped start the conversation and get it going, but I didn't like how it was framed in some corners.
No, you're right. I mean, the connection definitely helped. No, it would be a bigger issue, and it would be collusion if Bradley Beal did not have a no trade clause, and a team like Miami or Brooklyn or New York came in with a whopping offer, right? Just said, like, we're going to give you 3 1s and young players. And Phoenix said, you know what? Or Washington said, you know what? We're going to do it to the team that's got 2nd round picks and expiring contracts. Then that would raise the red flag. It just wasn't the case here.
The no trade clause is the whole thing. It's the whole thing. And it's a disaster for the Wizards. They're 5 years late. At 3 years late at minimum, trading Bradley Beal.
3 years late.
The no trade clause is the whole thing.
Yeah, 3 years late on this, and I understood why They re-signed him last year. I did not understand certainly the no trade because you were giving him 50 more than another team, and to add that in there. And we knew there was eventually going to be the day when we were going to be faced with this, because I just never saw the writing on the wall where this was going to be a 50-win team.
I saw the vomit on the wall. Can I tell you something else while we're here that grinds my gears? Totally unrelated to any of this. I'm going to get into this more later. I'm going to monitor the landscape. I haven't liked this. I got a bone to pick with Perk specifically.
Oh, here we go.
And I picked it with him on TV last week. But
can I tell you a funny story before
Sure.
you get into yours? So my 14-year-old, I went to go pick them up, him and his buddies up. They were at a party.
Oh boy.
And
boy.
So listen, we had the whole discussion with my wife. She said she laid it all out. There was like, here's your one chance. And it was a party where other school like different schools, it wasn't just his. So I picked him and his buddies up from a party, and we're driving home, and they're all in the back seat, and they're like, Mr. Marks, do you know Kendrick Perkins? And I was like, I do. They're like, can we ask you a question? I'm like, yeah. They're like, why is he such a bleep on NBA 2K? Why is he such a jerk? So I said, I don't know. It's a good question. So when we were out in LA doing NBA Today, Cooper, my 14-year-old, saw Perk in the hallway. He said, hey, Perk. Perk, what's up, little man? He says, why are you such a jerk on NBA 2K? Perk looked at him like, what? He's like, what are you talking about? And yeah, that's
is he a commentator in NBA 2K?
He's a hater.
To the players?
He's a hater.
But this goes beyond Perk. I've seen this pop up in several media places. So here's what's happened in the past 2 weeks. Nikola Jokic was the best player on the championship team. 2 years after Giannis was the best player on the championship team. Ja Morant was suspended 25 games for waving a gun on Instagram after waving a gun on Instagram Live before. Why anybody has Instagram Live is goddamn beyond me. And Zion Williamson was embroiled in some off-court drama that I don't want to get further into because it's rated NC-17. And so now I've seen this propagated in a few places and Perk said it out loud on TV.
I know where you're going with this.
If you want to build a team, he said something like, look for, and Alan Hahn echoed it on Get Up, look for international players. This is a bad moment for American players. Look for international players. And I'm like, dude, we've now done the 180 so fast on all of this. And I just am uncomfortable. Like I pivoted so fast away from that on NBA Today when Perk brought it up, because like, I'm not gonna, Jokic is unbelievable. I've been on Jokic since he came into the league. Giannis is unbelievable. Perk brought up Embiid. Like, okay, Embiid hasn't like gotten it done in the playoffs to the degree that the other guys have as an international guy. I'm not reading anything in from Morant and Zion to like, oh, I got to look at international guys. I think there are interesting issues in what it's like for an international player who starts playing professionally at a younger age versus coming up in AAU here. I think that's a worthy area to investigate. But like, Steph Curry won the championship 2 years ago. LeBron was the most dominant force in the league for 20 years. Kevin Durant has been, there's a lot of pressure on Kevin Durant now. Like, if this thing fails in Phoenix, Kevin Durant goes to Phoenix, Chris Paul's out, Monty Williams is out. Like, they got to win here. But like, he's one of the 20 greatest players of all time. Like, I don't like where that's headed. And I felt like the train got out of the station last week and began accelerating, and it's going to keep accelerating. And if I were Devin Booker or Jason Tatum or some other American players who are younger, I'd be like, wait a second, what are people saying? If I'm Damian Lillard, I'm saying, wait, what are people saying?
Since we're talking about that bothered me a little bit is that, well, they just need a change of scenery. Wait a minute. What do you mean? You don't think the issues that Ja Morant had in Memphis wouldn't pop up somewhere else if he doesn't face that square on, or with Zion and New Orleans if, from a health standpoint. So yeah, I agree with you on the I saw that. It rubbed me the wrong way, the international, part that if I was an American, as you said, if I was an American, Booker, Durant, one of these players, that certainly would bother me also.
While we're here, what did you think of Ja Morant getting suspended for 25 games?
I thought that's what it was going to be. I never I went on I went into the dark place on Twitter, and people were like, I actually went in and read comments when I think I might have said something about, I guess it was just maybe how much he got fined, and people like, oh, it should have been 50. This, should have been a year. I was like, well, like I thought if it was 50, that he would have definitely filed a grievance, and that probably would have been reduced to 25. I think the league saw that as a sweet spot. We'll see if he files a grievance. I thought it was going to be that number. Gilbert Arenas was 50 games because they basically had a gun, an old like Western like gun draw in the locker room. Like that was a little bit different than what this was.
Yeah, I was setting the over under at 20.5, and I was taking the over, but under 30.5. This was one of the debates we had over drinks during the finals one night. So it was not unexpected. I will say it's interesting, and the NBA got into this in their statement to some degree. If you go back and look at gun-related suspensions, Arenas is a totally different thing. That's in the locker room. That's guns in the facility. Totally, that's just over here. Steven Jackson shot a gun outside a strip club. 7 games. Raymond Felton brandished, I think, a semi-automatic weapon in a domestic dispute. 4 games. Now, those cases were adjudicated. Those were criminal cases. Both Raymond Felton and Steven Jackson pleaded guilty to like lesser charges, I think, than they were initially charged with. But those are real things, 7 games and 4 games under David Stern. So I do think it's fair to ask, like, well, Ja Morant doesn't appear to have violated any criminal laws in any of these cases. 25 games? I think it's a lot. What's the explanation? And I think the NBA got into it somewhat in its statement, and the explanation, I think, is a repeat offense. Well, Steven Jackson had done the Malice in the Palace. It's not a gun offense, but it's something. But repeat offense, and repeat like the same thing after being penalized and expressing contrition, which clearly was not all the way real. I think the fact that it's on video is a distinct thing in this day and age. Just we all see it. We see how it looks. I don't know what the new information. Remember, Adam Silver said, like, well, we've uncovered some new information.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I actually thought that was going to go the other way. Like, was it a toy gun? Was there something, was it maybe not?
What was the new info? I guess the
I don't
new
know.
information
I don't know.
was,
I don't know what it was.
I guess what was alluded to in the press release was that he was aware that he was being recorded. And I guess the gun was real. Is that all the new information that was recovered? Like, I think the number is fair-ish. If I were Ja Morant's representatives and the Grizzlies, I would actually just want a meeting with the NBA. Like, can you give me a little more about why 25 games? But I don't think it's outlandish. I also just don't like. Everyone's like, how does this affect the Grizzlies? I'm like, I don't know. The Grizzlies have played pretty goddamn well without Ja Morant. It's 25 games. Chances are they'll be like 500, maybe a couple games over, a couple games under, a few games over, whatever. And if he comes back and this is water under the bridge, you just keep building your team. If it's not water under the bridge, if it's a recurring issue, then your whole franchise is a little screwed up.
The only way I think it would affect the Grizzlies would be if they looked at Tyus Jones as that trade asset to how to kind of find a small forward out there. And now with this, does Tyus not, would he come off the table in any deal because who's playing guard for you? Like that would be really the only from a trade standpoint, roster building standpoint.
They've always taken the long view. I don't see why they would change now, even if it means really taking a step back at guard for the first 25 games. We'll see. Let's finish with Chris Paul. Chris Paul probably doesn't want to play for the Wizards. Chris Paul's family's on the West Coast and he wants to win. Any place that Chris Paul goes, if he's ever presented with some options, I don't know if he will be, there will be a lot of boxes to check, but the two most important ones will be winning and proximity to his family. Chris Paul, his $30.8 million salary is now either mostly or all guaranteed, depending on the specifics of this trade.
At least 25 is guaranteed. Which is not
all the way official yet. The Wizards could still, whatever it ends up being, the Wizards could just waive him and say, we're done. We're not stretching you. We're just waiving you. Here's all your money. You're a free agent. You'll clear waivers. You can sign wherever you want. In which case, the whole league becomes available to him to some degree. The Clippers, I believe, can they even offer the non-tax mid-level?
No, they just have the vet minimum.
So if he wants to go to the Clippers and if the Clippers want him, their choices are vet minimum. His choices / their choices are a vet minimum or trade at his full salary number. And the Clippers certainly have a number of salaries they can aggregate.
They got a bunch of expiring.
Which they won't be able to do aggregate in a year. The Lakers, though, could offer at least the non-tax mid-level.
Yeah, they've got 12 too. I think the big question with Chris is if it's a buyout, is there significance, basically whatever you earn somewhere else, like you're not going to double dip. And even if there wasn't, there's going to be some type of, he'll make some money off it, but there'll be some set off.
I mean, the Clippers is poetry, right? Like that's the one that I know he's expressed that he wants to play with LeBron. So they're friends. They've always dreamed of playing together, and the fit there is interesting. It gives them an alternative to paying D'Angelo Russell. The Clippers, it's a great fit, and they have multiple ways to do it. It's a West Coast team near his family. Makes a lot of sense. Any other the Lakers and the Clippers are the obvious ones. Are there any other ones that you have thought about?
No, that's what I would see it from his perspective, and from we've heard certainly the Clippers, would you trade for him, and when you trade for him you basically have to give up some type of combination of probably Marcus Morris, Batum, Covington, that group. 2 out of those 3 players it would probably cost you a second round pick. And if I've heard
people like throw out Terrence Mann's name. Delete that one.
They weren't even going to put him in there was a deal during the year. I don't know. There was some type of deal that I heard he might be your, he's your emergency point guard if, certainly, and he's a good player and he's on a great contract here. But yeah, that would be, so that's why what is the benefit of trading for him? And you probably have to give up something also, where he just goes through, because he's not going to be able to there's nobody out there to claim him, and he'll just go through waivers and he can sign there for the vet minimum.
Well, but the point is, what's his vet minimum is almost like 3.5.
Yeah, it's like 3 and change. Yeah.
But if I've got to compete with a team that's offering him 12,
then
I'm at a significant disadvantage.
Yep. But getting that full amount helps. He's not getting 15.8, so that certainly
that's true.
Certainly helps now.
You're right. Maybe it doesn't end up mattering. Of the teams that have been, here are some teams that have been bandied about in the public sphere of the media. Spurs doesn't check the winning box. It's interesting. I would be surprised. Milwaukee, that's something the Bucks have thought about before with Chris. They haven't gotten too serious about it in the past. We'll see. Boston, the endless need for someone to run the offense in crunch time. Maybe. Boston's got a lot of guards. East Coast, far from his family. Checks the winning box. As do the Bucks. I thought about, I asked some people last night, like, would he ever want to go to Memphis and be the veteran mentor that this team, who's not going to have its point guard for the first 25 games of the season, so badly needs? Didn't get a lot of good feedback on that one. Kind of like the fit, but it's far. I mean, Memphis is basically an Eastern Conference team geographically. The one there are 2 I wouldn't totally rule out. Houston, just because he's familiar with it and they're going to have money. don't think it ends up happening. Just wouldn't rule it out. What if Miami doesn't get Lillard? Why wouldn't they try some way or another to get Chris Paul?
That's a great point. I mean, and we'll see what happens with Gabe Vincent, who's certainly going to be desirable, but that's certainly worth making the phone call.
We got 3 days before the draft.
I know. I'm already in like free agency mode. I'm not, and I feel like I need to go to training camp for free agency and like the off season, like during the whole Beal stuff. I missed a couple things yesterday, and I was like, I need like a camp, like a 3-day of like just 9 trades in a day to get me conditioned to kind of where we are.
Well, but everybody does. The CBA isn't done. Teams don't have the CBA. It's June 19th. We're all going off a term sheet.
Yeah,
that has
that's very bland. There's not like when the CBA
it's not exciting. It's not a page turner.
Well, the CBA is like Greek mythology. Like I need examples. Like when I send you guys notes, I have to put examples there to help like people like understand it better here. But no, the term sheet, and that's where the aggregate rule is not as certainly defined. But no, we don't have a CBA written. We have new rules coming out. I have fancy graphics that came out last night on the apron. Everyone can go out and look at it. And
that's Suns apron. They need to make that.
That's right.
I will buy it, and I will post a photo of myself grilling bad hamburgers.
You know what we should do is we
apron.
just change the second apron to the Ishbia.
Oh boy. Guys already held the ball in the front row and caused a fracas. Now we're going to name something after him. Well, I mean, the Durant trade was made before the second apron was something that anyone knew about. The second apron is not going to be a hard cap. Clearly, Phoenix has just punched a hole through it, but it's going to operate similarly to one for most teams. The Suns didn't really know that was coming when they made this trade for Durant, to highlight the uncertainty that people are operating under here. Then there's this whole frozen draft pick rule that people are just like, wait, what happens? My draft pick gets frozen. I can't trade it. Then it goes to the back somehow.
I said on the video when I did on YouTube, and Dave McMenamin quote tweeted, and he's like, I love like drunk Bobby Marks doing trade. I wasn't drunk, but like my delirious. And I said, 2032. I go, we might all be dead by then. Who the hell knows? There might be like dinosaurs here.
I'm telling you right now. I'm going to Vegas next month. I might resurrect the drinking Lowe Post podcast. Not sure who the cast will be. If it's going to be the original cast or not, I don't know who's going to be where, but it's time to resurrect that thing. Then you just don't know what's going to happen. There was one time we did that podcast. It was the one we did at the bar with the freaking parrots chirping in the background, where I was on beer pint 3, and I started saying something, and I was like, this actually probably shouldn't be said. I was still good enough to just be like, you know what? No. All right, Bobby Marks, you got to go. You're in Bristol all week. We're going to see you on the airwaves. I am in
Bristol till tomorrow. I'll be in Brooklyn for the draft, and then back to Bristol on Friday for free agency. And yes, you'll see me all week.
Boy, oh boy, Bobby Marks, hardworking man.
I packed a lot of shoes.
Shoes take up a lot of anyway. Okay, Bobby Marks, we'll see you on ESPN.
See you, man.
Off-season guides for all 30 teams are up. If you want to learn what the new CBA is going to be like, follow Bobby Marks on Twitter. Thank you, sir.
Hey, buddy.
And I'm super excited to welcome in our next guest. He needs absolutely no introduction. From Meadowlark Media, the host of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gatz, and a whole just endless band of merry people, including a very cranky Mike Ryan the other day. Dan Le Batard, how are you, sir?
I would be better if the endless band of people that I have wasn't quite so cranky. I would be better, but generally okay. So thank you for asking, Zach.
So I wanted you on because obviously we're celebrating the Nuggets. We're both celebrating the Nuggets and looking ahead to the NBA offseason. We already had a huge trade. I have caught a decent portion of your shows the last couple of weeks during the Heat playoff run because I know how you are Miami and the Heat are doing this thing from the play-in to the finals. And there were 2 snippets of yours that I just adored as a consumer of sports. The first was almost rooting for the Celtics to make the conference finals interesting, because the agony and the stress is part of it. And without that, it's not even fun. And I think you were actually rooting for a game 7. And the second, and the one I want to start with, was your kind of, I think you're in your 50s now. You said you're going through some real stuff. I'm in my mid 40s. We're going through some real stuff, parents, all that stuff. And just sort of thanking the Heat for the experience of getting all the way to the finals. Yeah, they lost 4-1, and being okay with not winning, because the experience and the journey and the stress and the ups and downs is just, it's all part of it. And it really is it. And I wondered if you might elaborate on that a little bit, because I absolutely love that.
I got into this because I wanted to celebrate sports. When I say this, I mean, this is a career. I watched my father every day have dinner at a dinner table where he was complaining about work. And I said to myself, I want to have something in my life that doesn't feel like that when I go to work. And as I see a total coarsening of how we cover this stuff, where there is one winner and everyone else is a loser. We call them losers because you only get one winner every year, and the critic always gets to win because you've got plenty to choose from on who's a choker and who failed. And almost every discussion in either sports debate, television, or social media through this coarsening is find me the person that I can criticize. I was just grateful for the blessed distraction of the unexpected. The surprise to me is the best thing in sports. And the idea that a team that I didn't expect to do anything, because it was one of the worst shooting teams in the league and one of the worst offensive teams in the league, for them to mow down a Giannis I would have preferred to see against Denver in the final, for them to mow down the Boston Celtics, is not something that I'm going to get distracted by the punctuation when the statement before it was 2 months long and the punctuation is just a dot at the end. I'm not going to obsess about the dot. I understand why people do it, and I understand why second place isn't good enough for many, but I just enjoyed the blessed distraction as too many people get caught up with their identities and an unreasonable perspective when it comes to sports. I just enjoyed what it is that we had instead of lamenting that it ended.
When I messaged you about coming on to talk about this, I said, as someone who's been around the Heat when they were playing the Knicks a little bit, when they were playing the Celtics and in the finals, and watching the finals slip away from them and seeing their people every day when they were down 2-1, down 3-1, down 4-1, I got the sense that although they were devastated by not winning, that they looked at it just like you did, which we wouldn't expect from, Riley is there's winning and there's misery. I don't know Pat Riley. I don't talk to Pat Riley now. I wonder if he even really stands by that anymore, because I got the sense, unspoken mostly, some spoken, from Spo, from the coaches, from Andy Ellisberg, that there's winning and there's losing, but there's pride also. And I think that even as they felt the finals slipping away from them, they were very proud at what they had done, and they look at it this season as a rousing success. Have you gotten a chance to speak to any of them about that?
I've talked to a lot of them to know that they know it was an amazing and rare run. I would say to you, however, that Pat Riley is devoid of this particular perspective. I would say that Pat Riley is immune to the idea that you will be able to change his mind on there is winning and there is misery. You will not be able to change his mind on that. He doesn't have to be doing this anymore, Zach. He has on his phone a bunch of cameras that allow him to check in on the Malibu vacation house that he never gets to get to because he's down here in the cave at close to 80 years old, tied up in this thing, making him feel more alive. I will say that one of the things that buoys him is he enjoys sitting in Boston in Game 7 and being pelted by everybody. He enjoys being in Milwaukee more than he enjoys being at home surrounded by support, because he's a lunatic. He's a crazy person about competition. Still doesn't talk to Michael Jordan and Larry Bird because of what happened 40 years ago. So perspective eludes him, but I will say others in the organization were amazed by that because it was almost totally unexpected. Once you go in, I mean, you know, Zach, I don't need to explain the history of this to you. 8 seeds don't do that. For a lot of people to be picking the Heat and get caught in the idea of making arguments, well, Spo and Riley have a magic toolbox that's going to allow them to dismantle this giant, unprecedented person. And they played him better than anyone did in the playoffs. They defended the Nuggets a good deal better than anyone else. But at the end of all of it, Denver still had a guy better than anybody that they had.
There's nothing in sports like the experience of loving a team and watching them all the time. And I haven't had that experience since the New York Mets of my childhood into my mid to late 20s. And I always tell people, like, when you're watching every game and the team gets good and you're invested in it, you learn just all the quirks of the players. Like, I can still close my eyes and see Ray Ordonez sliding and picking up a ground ball, and the way John Olerud would take his helmet off between pitches, and you grow to love all their little quirks and read into them. So as someone who watched this team, what from this playoff run are you going to remember?
It's an elevated state of living, Zach. Anyone listening to this, okay? They may indeed tell me that the best day of their lives was the day that their children were born, but I doubt that they were screaming at a television or jumping up and down in the delivery room the way that they do in the fourth quarter of a game, because sports has a weird grip on the people who care about it, so that you still do remember that stuff that imprinted your childhood. What I'll remember is that it is as big a surprise as I have ever seen in sports in this town. I was making the argument that this one would have felt better than any of the titles with LeBron or any of the titles the Heat had, just because, as I mentioned earlier, I believe that the greatest thing in sports is the surprise. You're telling me about the confidence a fan gets watching their team get good. I'll tell you when I've seen the Heat get good, because I didn't see it at any point during the regular season. I don't believe that was a great basketball team. I believe that was a basketball team that needed some of the things that you need: luck and a healthy Jimmy Butler for the first 10 games, where he was normal or abnormal, I would say, super heroic over 10 games. The surprise is just, to me, the coolest thing, and being delighted by a team that you did not expect anything from, because I didn't, Zach, I watched the team all year. I'm still expecting them to lose to Giannis. I'm still expecting the Milwaukee Bucks to rally in that series, because that made no sense to me that they would do it easily there. That up until the last few games at Boston, the whole thing was easy for them. They never trailed in a series at any point before getting to the finals. That's just lunacy. You know the history of the sport. You know how infrequently you see anything like that.
The euphoria you're describing, not to sidetrack this about the Mets, but I cared way too deeply about the Mets. I can't anymore because I don't follow them. You remember they traded for Mike Piazza from the Marlins. And my favorite player on the Mets at that time was Todd Hundley, who played Mike Piazza's position. And so I was super excited about getting Mike Piazza. It's Mike Piazza. But I was like, oh, man, this is going to stink for Todd Hundley. And they tried him at first base, I believe. They tried him in the outfield. It was a disaster. There was one game in September of that year in Houston, who was good, where Piazza hit, I think, a 3-run homer in the top of the ninth off Billy Wagner to send the game into extra innings. And Todd Hundley, I don't know if he was pinch hitting or what, I can't remember, hit a solo homer in extra innings to win the game. And I was home from college in my childhood home. My sister was out with her friends because she's cooler than me. My mom and dad were sleeping. And because it was Hundley, I literally ran around the entire house up and down the stairs screaming. As I'm doing it, I'm aware how stupid this is, but it just took me away. I will always remember that game, and it was a regular season game, but that's what it does.
I want to salute you for covering more intensively Mets games from 20 years ago than anyone in the podcast industry. But what you speak of, I have seen inside of my own family, where I have my father. Gabe Vincent has been his favorite player just because he's tiny, hustler, and his story's crazy. I've seen my father fall in love with Gabe Vincent that way, and I've seen my mother not want to trade for Lillard or Beal because she doesn't want to disrupt the magic of this. And I recognize it because I heard all the people arguing on behalf of a 42-40 Heat team that had Bryant, Grant, Lamar Odom, and Dwayne Wade on it because they didn't want Shaquille O'Neal. They wanted to keep that lovable little team that, again, was 2 games over 500 because they've fallen in love with the grittiness of it. How can you not love, Zach, wherever it is that your cynicisms lie about professional sports? I'm perpetually amazed by athletes. I marvel at them, and so I don't spend a lot of time on the cynical side of this. But how can you not marvel at the idea of falling in love and having your identity tied up in a team that has half of its players undrafted, half of its players anybody could have had, anybody in basketball could have chosen them in the draft that does the measurement on skills, and all of them were unwanted? Like, that's a pretty easy thing to fall in love with. Jimmy Butler's style of play, going and trying to get 15 free throws a game. You saw a team care. I think one of the criticisms of Jokic, the only one that I could file, is that it appears joyless what he's doing, and the customer wants the athlete to feel some of the same things so that that connection could grow. You could tell how much the Heat cared. It was obvious.
So the undrafted thing, I will just tell you that as this run happened, it wasn't just fans who were captured by this. I've had conversations with front office executives all across the NBA who are all asking in internal meetings, what can we learn from this? What can we learn from how the Heat did this to be this mediocre team in the regular season and do this in the playoffs? Are there lessons in team building? Are there lessons in where the NBA is going in terms of parity that we need to download from it? The entire league was not studying the Nuggets because everybody knows what the Nuggets did and how they were built and what this player is, Jokic. They were studying the Heat for, like, what is it, their decision-making apparatus? Is it their commitment to Spoelstra? It was cool to talk, and it was a legitimate mystery. And you can talk to 10 GMs, and one would say it was all luck. One would say if Giannis doesn't get hurt, they're out. And then 5 would say they've got something there that they're doing right that we need to emulate. It was very interesting to have that discussion with people.
I don't know the answer. I suppose some of it can be mystery, but if you're willing to believe that Pat Riley is a magician in this respect, Zach, because if the game were going to pass someone by, the blueprint of how you would draw that up is someone near 80 watching the game go from 2-pointers to 3-pointers when he always scored with Kareem and Patrick Ewing. Like, if you weren't going to be able to evolve with the modern times, that would look a lot like that. If I extrapolate that and tell you Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry missed a bunch of personal time the last couple of years, and at no time in Riley's career was that okay. You can't, whatever's going on at home, there's not missing for personal time. That is not a thing. If one of the evolutions here, and I don't know if this is so, but you can conjure whatever magic you want when a team wins like that. What if in the age of load management, the old dinosaur was just gearing his team for a playoff run all season? What if the organization is aligned with the player on the idea of it's not just going to be load management scientifically per player, it's going to be team wide, so that what happened last year when the Heat the wheels totally fell off against the Celtics doesn't happen again, that we're training scientifically. Zach, you've been in that place. It's a military silo. It's a military school for millionaires is what that place is. And so if the science of what it is that they were doing was to build it so it would run most efficiently, and suddenly they'd be able to shoot in the playoffs, I'm not quite an intangibles guy enough to believe in that when I can't prove it empirically. I'm not a faith-based sports fan. I want the data that supports what I'm saying. But if I were to make the argument, I'd make it around this basketball team if I was trying to make it, because there's some unexplained here that I'm like, okay, it can just be surprise. I'm not inclined to believe in magic, but Pat Riley has proven and taken 3 franchises to this place, and one in New York fell apart as soon as he left and never recovered from it. Like, he knows something that we don't know, and he's still crafting at that. Like that, I don't think that one's up for dispute. He's got a mastery of this thing that eludes men younger than him.
Last thing, because I know you got to go. The point about you wanting it to be difficult was so awesome, because I had a buddy of mine, Scott, who's a lifelong Nuggets fan, and shout out to Scott's little son, Mason, who enjoyed this in Denver and doesn't know the misery that led up to it. And he went to the game. He went to game 5. And I think when all our teams have a chance to win, as a fan, you're just like, I would love a 40-point game. Just like, I don't want to stress about it. I don't want to feel any stress. And he was hoping for that. And game 5 ended up being this slugfest down to the wire. And of course they win, but that's more fun. I know you have to win for it to be more fun, but I think even if you lose that game, it's still more fun. The agony, like, you feel it in your body like ceases to function normally in those moments of extreme sports stress. And I'm happy for him that he had to suffer through uncertainty and doubt for 48 minutes of that game until they won. That's better. That's better than 3 quarters of celebrating.
This isn't a sports thing for me. This is, I've been in years of therapy thing for me. The most rewarding, fulfilling things are the things that are hardest to do. There is growth on the other side of pain. Life principles. Just go toward the pain. There's growth on the other side of it. In this small little stupid playground, what Pat Riley calls the toy department of human affairs, it's a roller coaster. And the roller coaster is only fun when your stomach drops or if you're a little bit afraid. I understand that you want the comfort of 4 and 5 game series, never behind, you're always leading. That's uninteresting for everybody. It's the fear that makes it the most fun. Maybe there's no distinction, right? Maybe Denver had it so easy. They blew everybody out. They were clearly better than everybody. Maybe they're like, no, thank you. Don't want to fear, want to have the best player, want to have a cement mixer that rolls through the paint and just devours everything in its path. And I don't want to fear. But I've been having this argument for 14 years down here, Zach, because you can imagine how scared everybody was when it was America against the Heat and LeBron and Wade and Bosh. One of the things that made that the biggest sports story for me in the history of my South Florida sports journalism career is that there was always the fear there that the entire country was going to be laughing at you. It's what elevated all of it to a place that had such stakes for something. Let's be serious here. I know anyone who's finding your podcast takes these things unreasonably seriously, but something that's spectacularly stupid at its core. I love it. You love it. We all love it. But it's a silly thing for people who listen to this to be walking around for 2 or 3 days and with a hole in their stomach because the series in Miami went from 3-0 Boston to 3-3 and you really hate Boston. And now you're terrified. What Boston has felt for 3 straight games, now you get to feel for 3 straight games. That's exactly what made Game 7 so great and so awful for the people who won and lost, because everything got ratcheted to a place that is a higher plane of existence, not just for sports, but for life. Like, if you care about these things, there's very few things in the world, in entertainment or beyond, that make you feel the way this thing does.
Dan Le Batard, there's just nobody who talks about sports the way you do. It's poetry, and when you write, it's still poetry, and a well-reported poetry at that. Just absolutely one of a kind. I appreciate you making some time for us, and everyone knows the show. Everybody listens to it. I just am so appreciative that you came on.
Oh, please, Zach, what you've done, I will continue to tell people as I tell them privately and publicly, carving out a space in a labyrinth of and idiots where you have something that is uniquely yours and an audience that follows it. I respect it from over here because it's worth admiration. It's not that easy to do. And I know, well, I can imagine how hard you have worked on that hustle because it couldn't have happened without you pouring all of your soul into it.
I'll see you in South Beach within the next year, hopefully, sir. Thank you, Dan.
Anytime, Zach. Always happy to do this with you whenever you want to talk about sports. It's an amazing thing.